But right now, you can't say enough about that winning streak. We're putting the league on notice that we have found our identity once again, and that is defense. Yo, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Yelling and Propelling, episode number 17 here on the show. Shout out to Ivica Zubac, Brook Lopez, and Bol, three centers who have been playing great as of late for their respective teams, especially my boy Zubac, who had himself a career-best performance a few short weeks ago. I wanted to mention it when it happened, but wasn't able to get an episode out until right now. The man put up 31 points and 29 rebounds. Those are some Wilt Chamberlain numbers if I've ever seen them. One rebound short of a 30-30 game would have made him his own personal NFL-style 30-for-30 film. But yeah, shout out to Zubac. Guys, my schoolwork caught up with me. Finals kicked my derriere, but we made it through, and here we are. I'm also playing basketball myself in a rec league, averaging a triple single like my name is Draymond Green. So yes, it's been some time, a tad over 40 days to be exact, but I am glad to be back, and I'm glad that you have all tuned in to episode 17 of Yelling and Propelling. Let's get back into the swing of things, shall we? This could really be a monthly recap at this point if we wanted it to be, but I'm just going to highlight a couple of the noteworthy things that went down, some stuff that might have flown under the radar for you. First and foremost, this one's kind of old news at this point, but former Knick Kemba Walker is back on an NBA team. A few weeks back, he signed with the Dallas Mavericks. I don't know what is up with the Mavs and signing every former Knick, every player that gets released by the Knicks eventually makes their way to the Mavericks, but, shout out Kemba. The Mavericks are looking for a spark. They are stuck around that 500 mark. They can't really get too many games above it without falling back down. So far, Kemba has been averaging 15 points per game for the club off the bench, which is real solid. About a week and a half ago, Warriors star point guard Stephen Curry, you might have heard of him, suffered a labrum injury and is expected to miss 2 to 4 weeks at least. They interviewed him when the Warriors played the Knicks a couple days back, and he said that it doesn't look like he's going to be returning anytime soon. So you could probably update that time frame to maybe a month, maybe even 2 months. They want to completely avoid rushing him back, which you've got to respect, but this stretch for the Warriors without Steph is going to be the make or break spot of the season for them because they're already at 15-8, and if you go just even, a little bit more below 500, by the time Curry returns next year, it might just be too late. You hate to see any player go down with a mid-season injury, but especially a player who was playing some of the best basketball of his career. Anthony Davis, who obviously has had his string of injuries. I mean, people were calling him made of glass, which he might be, but you got to feel for the guy. I mean, he was playing great this season and single-handedly bringing the Lakers back from that 2-10 start. He dropped 50 at least once, but just other monster performances. But unfortunately for the Lakers, it was announced earlier this week that Davis is expected to miss at least 1 month after suffering a right foot injury. The Lakers, kind of in a similar scenario to the Warriors, 13-18, 2 spots below Golden State on the Western Conference standings. Now, moving forward for at least the next month without their best player, it's going to be tough. Former number 1 overall pick Cade Cunningham of the Detroit Pistons is expected to have season-ending surgery on his left shin. He suffered the injury very beginning of the season. It had to have been within the first 5 or 10 games. He had been out since then, and it was feared that he was going to have to undergo this procedure that would knock him out for the rest of this season. But it's not the worst thing for the Pistons. I mean, they'll get him back at the start of next year now that he's going through the surgery now rather than waiting and then saying, oh, guess what? He's out for the season like in February. So it's not like worst case scenario for Detroit, who is like at the bottom of the East right now, probably won't even have a shot of making the play in a couple months from now. So you're going to end up with a better draft pick and come back stronger than ever next year. Let's stay in that general geographic location and talk about the Chicago Bulls. And there's been some trade rumors with that team, particularly Zach LaVine's name has been circling around. There are multiple NBA teams monitoring the situation with LaVine and the Bulls. The Bulls are currently 13-18, playing well below expectations with that big three since, it was first formed. DeRozan, LaVine, and Nikola Vucevic. Not a whole lot of news has been broken on this situation just yet, but of course the Knicks are interested, and they're one of the teams that are tapped in here, so it could get pretty interesting come the trade deadline, maybe even a little sooner. And lastly, we've got another unfortunate segue into the Knicks now. Obi Toppin suffered a left knee injury about 2 weeks back. It was reported then by Woj that he would be reevaluated in 2 to 3 weeks, so probably by the beginning of January we could start to hear of his return, but the Knicks have been without Obi for a little bit of time now. I think he's progressing pretty well. I saw a picture of him at a holiday party the other day. The Knicks have played a good 15 games or so since the last time we spoke, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not going to go over every single one, but we have to talk about at least the last 5 or 6 because they went on an 8-game winning streak just out of nowhere. A lot of those games on the road as well. And starting off, we're going back a week and a half ago to the Chicago back-to-back we had against the Bulls. Both games in the Windy City, and you know what they say. You can't spell Bulls without back-to-back L's. Our performance in the second of the back-to-back here is what really made me believe that this team might actually have something special brewing here. Because winning both games of a back-to-back against the same team, not even to mention that we didn't have home cooking for either, is not an easy task. You win the first, say, which we did. The other team figures out what they did wrong, makes adjustments, and they come out with a chip on their shoulder in efforts to not drop 2 in a row to the same exact team. So this is where I personally really started to believe that this wasn't just a fool's rally with the Knicks, and it's where I think we should start off by talking about. Our first game against the Bulls, we were victorious 128 to 120. The game went to overtime. We dominated from there 11 to 3. Julius Randle with 31 points and 13 rebounds, Jalen Brunson with 30 himself, and RJ Barrett a cool 22. 2 days later, we had Chicago again, and like I said, you know they're going to come out with a chip on their shoulder. They're going to say, hey, we got to shut down Brunson, Randle, make those other guys beat us, make those guys that are younger, inexperienced, let them, make the shots. If they're going to beat us, then so be it. No overtime was necessary for this one, and Quentin Grimes was one of those young guys. He dropped 22 points in 28 minutes, 27 for RJ, and 22 as well for Jalen Brunson. The back-to-back dubs wasn't enough to get rid of Chicago for the month. We're going to see them again Friday, which I believe is the day that this episode's going to be uploaded. But this time, we are in the Garden, MSG, about to make it 3-0 on the season against the Bulls. Moving on to Saturday, the 18th, we faced the Indiana Pacers in their home arena, and we were victorious again, 109 to 106 here. This is a Pacers team that I mentioned has been on a nice run recently. They've really been on fire, and we shut them down because we're even more on fire at this point. Jalen Brunson had another 30 ball, 25 points for Julius Randle, and 24 for RJ Barrett. The following Tuesday, we played the Golden State Warriors, and this one was a murder, folks. 132 to 94, we took down the reigning champs. Of course, I mentioned it before, they were without Stephen Curry. They were without Andrew Wiggins as well in this one. He's dealing with something minor. Klay Thompson just straight up didn't show up, leaving Jordan Poole as the only real scorer for the Warriors in this one. And when you look at the Warriors roster right now, with a couple injuries to their starting lineup, they are depleted of any guys that are able to step up. Their roster, you can just go down the list. You've got Moses Moody, Jonathan Kuminga, James Wiseman, Ty Jerome, list goes on. But these guys are unproven. They don't know their role on an NBA team yet. They have yet to get those real NBA minutes. They don't know their role on this Warriors team. It's no secret why they're struggling right now. I mean, of course, you could just say, yes, Steph is out. I mean, he was doing everything for them before he went out, for sure. But I just don't think what they have around that franchise starting lineup right now is going to take them far in the playoffs this year. So the win against the Warriors made it 8 in a row for the New York Knickerbockers, but unfortunately the following night the winning streak came to an end against Toronto. We were home in MSG, but we were defeated 113 to 106. I mean, the biggest reason for that, when you look at the box score, there's something that really sticks out. The elephant in the box score is Pascal Siakam scoring 52 points, 9 rebounds, and 7 assists. Almost a 50-point triple-double for Spicy P. So shout out to him, but geez, man, we could not contain him for the life of us. It was an off night for Jalen Brunson, which probably is the first of the season, really. I mean, he only had 7 points, shot 3 for 14, had 12 assists, so he impacted the game in other ways positively. RJ Barrett and Julius Randle each had 30 points, and RJ played 45 and a half minutes out of a total 48 in the second of a back-to-back, so I'm sure he was exhausted after this one. That's just classic Tom Thibodeau, you know? And with that, we are caught up to speed. The Knicks are 18-14 on the season, currently sitting at the 6th seed in the East, and the winning streak really saved the season. I mean, there's no other way to put it. What you heard from me last episode, what I was ranting about, all of that is where we were at, pretty much, before we won 8 straight. I mean, it wasn't looking good. It could have easily been 3 straight losses on the road, and then bam, Tom Thibodeau's gone. The whole season is flipped on its head, and everything changes. Our priorities change. We start selling some of our veterans, and we still might do that. I mean, the guys that aren't playing right now, Evan Fournier, Derrick Rose, those are guys that I think is very likely we move on from before or at the trade deadline this year. But to put the New York Knicks in one of the 4 categories of which direction an NBA team is moving in, that being buying number 1, selling number 2, rebuilding number 3, and contending number 4, I honestly would put them more so in contending rather than buying. At this very moment, you don't see the Knicks in every single player's trade rumors, right? That's more like off-season Knicks stuff. Like we'll see that in the off-season after we've already fallen well below expectations. Everybody's laughing at us again because we missed the playoffs, or we got knocked out in the first round, or we missed the playoffs. But right now, you can't say enough about that winning streak. We're putting the league on notice that we have found our identity once again, and that is defense. It's no secret. We want everybody to know. Ring the bell. Ding, ding. The witch is dead. Listen. Our identity is defense. With this team, with this roster, with this coach, our identity and how we're going to win games is because of our defense. It's how we were so successful and how we got so far in the 2020 season. I know so far for a Knicks fan is losing in the first round of the playoffs, but hey, we got a playoff win. We got playoff experience, and that's valuable, But that was our real identity then, and it was at a time when, we're still in this time of, just NBA offenses just being unstoppable, and defense is kind of just an afterthought. All of, the traditional things of, a basketball team, like the team defense, the help defense, all of that stuff is kind of gone. You let the other team score, you run back and try to get a quick basket. It's all offense nowadays, right? But we brought that in 2020. It was really us and the Bucks and everybody else, but us on the top. We were the best team in the league defensively in pretty much every category. Defensive rating, opponent 3-point percentage, opponent field goal percentage, you name it. And our offense just stunk that year. It was flat out horrible. Now, granted, Julius Randle, we were running the whole thing through him, and he was playing his role to perfection. Do not get me wrong. He deserved to be an all-star. He deserved to be in that MVP conversation by the end of the season. And you guys hear me talk about this all the time. I probably talk and think about it too much. I'm nostalgic over that time when Julius Randle was playing like an MVP and we were all in lockdown playing Call of Duty Cold War. It's very nostalgic. But you get my point. If we're not pointing at Julius Randle's heroics, the number one reason for our success in the 2020-2021 NBA season was our defense. Plain and simple. So what's gotten us back to that this year? Well, it's certainly not just one player being taken out of the rotation or one player being added in. You can't just say, okay, well, now that Evan Fournier's not playing anymore or Derrick Rose isn't playing anymore, two notably weak defenders were playing better defensively. It's definitely not that. While that could have contributed, you can't just say that tells the whole story. Can we point at 3 sort of in-your-face kind of things that has helped us go on this 8-game winning streak and has aided us in bringing back our identity? I do believe we can. And first and foremost, I talked about it so much last episode, but Tom Thibodeau's lack of stubbornness this year is it's one of my 3 reasons why we're able to have this success. It was so much in the entirety of Tom Thibodeau's coaching career that he would just pick a lineup, and even if that lineup just wasn't really working, he would stick with it until he literally could not anymore. If there was an injury that forced his hand, he would shorten the rotation. This is stuff I've made jokes about in the past. He would rather go, with an 8-man rotation with 8 guys that he trusts than bring in a new guy and see how he fits with the team, That is literally what he's done. He was experimenting with an 11-man rotation a month ago, and now we're down to a 9-man rotation, which is more his style, but you get the point. He's just going all over the place, just trying anything that'll work, which you should. He's acting as more of an experimental coach, and it's totally just the opposite of what we know Tom Thibodeau to be as a head coach, but it's working. It's clearly working, and it's inspiring this team to start winning games and start playing hard, especially on the defensive end. So on the defensive end, two players. This would be my number 2 reason. I'm going to highlight 2 guys for the number 2 reason. Those 2 players are Miles McBride and Quentin Grimes. Both selected in the 2021 NBA draft. Didn't do much of anything last year, especially Deuce McBride. He really didn't get much playing time at all. We saw a very small sample size of what Quentin Grimes could be, that being a very solid 3-and-D kind of player, but didn't strike anybody as an up-and-coming elite defender in the league. But him and Deuce McBride have been phenomenal defensively as their minutes have increased, and they're just like that spark plug almost. They inspire those around them, active hands, always in the passing lanes. I mean, we've seen Tom Thibodeau take the 2 of them and put them on the other team's best offensive players for their respective positions, with Miles McBride guarding the other team's star point guard, and then Quentin Grimes guarding the other team's, best wing offensive player. So they're defensive stoppers in their own right. And I don't mind giving a little bit too much credit to these guys, because what they've done to me, stuff that won't show up on the stat sheet, to me they're actually starting to change the culture of this team. They're inspiring the veterans to start going hard on the defensive end again. We're never going to see that stuff show up in numbers, but it's worth noting, and that's why they're the number 2 spot on this list. I mean, you can't say enough about the 2 of them and their play during this stretch we've had. The third and final reason I've got for you guys as to why the Knicks have been so dominant as of late and why we're getting back to what we know best, which is defense, is because of a few other select guys on the team that have taken accountability for last season's horrible defensive effort and have picked up the slack this year. 2 guys in particular, Emmanuel Quickley and Mitchell Robinson. We got to talk about IQ first, because he, amongst the 2 of them, is not known for his defense at all. I mean, everybody knows what he's capable on the offensive end, but this year defensively, he's been nothing short of superb. I mean, listen to this one stat, and that'll be all you need to know. I mean, for player defensive rating, he is number 2 in the league. Number 2. Amongst all players, not just his position, not just people his age. No. Amongst every single defensive player, minimum of probably, 20 games played, somewhere around there. But seriously, he's number 2. I mean, Nicholas Batum is number 1, in case you were wondering. But yeah, number 2 in defensive rating. The dude is just really going after it defensively. Clearly he made an emphasis in the offseason to improve there, and it's paid its dividends thus far. I mean, he looks like a whole different player on the defensive end this year. You're comfortable putting him on a guy who scores 15, 20 points a night and not letting him go off. So yeah, you just have to highlight IQ when we're talking about this team's defense this year, because, I mean, he has stepped it up and then some. And also Mitchell Robinson, we know what he's capable of. I mean, just our defensive anchor for the past 4 or 5 years now. Is he in the Defensive Player of the Year discussion right now? Or would he be if he didn't go out for a month with that wrist injury? Probably not. It's not a coincidence that the Knicks have started to get hot, especially defensively, since Mitchell Robinson's return from injury. The Knicks are 10-5 since he made his return in November, and he really came back better than ever. I mean, I want to highlight his rebounding, but you can't highlight his rebounding without looking on the offensive end and talking about his offensive rebounding, because he is literally the best offensive rebounder in the game right now. So we need Mitch to be our starting center for our defense to be so effective and so locked down, because, some of the guys, when they get beat, they're comfortable getting beat. It's that Rudy Gobert effect. You let the guy go right into the paint so they can just get swatted by the blockness monster. I mean, that's just how it is. And he's simply irreplaceable with what we've got on the roster right now. I mean, Isaiah Hartenstein probably isn't even half of the rim protector that Mitchell Robinson is. Jericho Sims is still young, but again, just doesn't defend the rim nearly as well as Mitch. And if you want to go small ball, I mean, we've seen small ball work in crunch time, and I actually like it at some points depending on our matchup, but it's not sustainable for the whole game. Like, you got to have even the Warriors have Kevon Looney play center for at least 20 minutes a night and hold down the paint. So Mitch is our guy, and with the scheme that we have, there's no better guy to be playing the 5. That wraps up the top 3 reasons as to why the Knicks have been so great as of late, and that'll also do it for this episode of Yelling and Propelling. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a very Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to you and your family. It's probably single digits outside. Real feel and the negatives, I only really care about the real feel. That's something you should know about me. I never look at the actual temperature. I mean, I want to know what it's going to feel like when I go outside. I don't care if the real temperature is 10 degrees, if the real feel is -5, you got to dress appropriately. So, yeah, but real feel and the negatives, stay warm, stay safe, and farewell for now. Have a superb rest of your day or night, and I hope to see you again next year. Go Knicks.